Welcome in, darlings. Today we are taking a trip to an enchanted forest to meet my new doll, Thornella Divine, the Spring Fairy. Let's get into it. To make my magical fairy dreams a reality, I first need to prepare the sacrifice. First, I strip her of her poly locks, and then give her a quick soak in the boiling doll soup to remove her head. The heat from the soup also loosens the glue in her head so I can remove the remaining hair bits with ease. Yum. A quick facial to remove everything. It's all got to go, darling. Now I have a clean blank canvas to create some fairy magic. But first, who is Thornella Divine, you ask? Well, she is the Spring Fairy, the magical entity that brings back the verdant life and ushers in the land from winter to spring. When designing this doll, I wanted her to look as if she was part plant herself, so I incorporated vines, thorns, and lots of flowers into her design. I imagine her dress to be made of petals and leaves draped around her body. I plan to keep her color palette simple with primarily pinks and greens, with pops of color in the form of flowers draping around her body. Now that I have a finalized design, let's get into making her a reality. I started with her hair and decided to give her a luscious mix of pinks. I chose 3 different shades and then mixed them together. The final result had a lovely mix of highlights and lowlights, creating the dimensional color I was aiming for. I began to punch in the hair and then realized I had not painted the scalp yet. Whoops. And after a careful paint job, I punched in the rest of the hair. Once finished, I used fabric tack to glue the hair into place. The hair is set and it is time for the face-up. I wanted this fairy to have long elf-like ears, so before I began the face-up, I used epoxy sculpt to lengthen and to create my desired ear shape. Looking good. Now let's add on the other one with some editing magic. Nice. After painting her ear extensions to match, I began the blushing process with chalk pastels. I focus on building up the shadows to help make the sculpt of the head really pop. I then go in with my watercolor pencils and start sketching out her eyes. I like to slowly build out the eye until I'm happy with them. Once I am, I then start to add color, and for this fairy, I'm working in a pink and green palette, so I'm giving her a vibrant verdant eye to pop against her pink complexion. For her lips, I start with my pencil to give a little texture to her lips. Once I'm happy with that, I go in with the chalk pastels and start filling in the rest of the lips. From here, I build up the intensity layer by layer, darkening the eyeliner, shadowing the eyeball, and coloring in the eyes a little more. Returning with the chalk pastels, I use it to give the upper lid some dimension. I also add some to the lower lash line for the same reasons. Going back in with the pencils, I add in my lower lashes. And I also add some white highlights to the waterline and upper lid. The face is getting close to being complete, so it is time for some eyebrows. I use the pastels to map out the shape and placement beforehand, and then I go in with my pencils to create the individual hairs. Eyebrows complete, and I move on to the lashes. I start with a lighter color, and then I slowly build up the darker color as I did before. And what's a magical fairy without some sparkles, right? So I gave her a healthy dusting with some mica powder for some sparkle goodness. Final touches include a dab of white acrylic for some eye catches, and some gloss varnish on the eyes and lips. The face-up is done and it's on to the wings. I had sketched what I wanted the wings to look like on a piece of paper that I then imported into my drawing tablet. I traced over my drawing to create a template that I could use to shape wire to. Following the template, I bent the wires into shape to create the frames and veins for the wings. Next, I glued these wire bits to a sheet of Angelina fantasy film, and then covered them in another sheet of fantasy film and fused them together with an iron. Ta-da! We're fused and ready to trim them to shape. To do so, I use my scissors to trim away the excess, and then use a flame to melt and seal the edges. I also use this flame to shape the open edge of the wing. Using a lit incense stick, I also melt holes onto this open edge of the wing to add some additional details and interest. I twisted the wire ends together and the wings are done. I set them aside for now and move on to body modifications. First up on bod mods, I drilled 2 holes into the doll so I can install the wings I made just a little later. Next, out comes the good old epoxy sculpt to make Thornella's, well, thorns. I add thorns to her forearms and lower legs. I then rolled out some more epoxy sculpt to create vines for Miss Divine. I wrapped the vine-like epoxy around her legs and arms, so it looks as if the vines are as much a part of her as they are accessories. I also augment her chest with more epoxy sculpt, working hard to ensure that there is a seamless transition between the body and added material. Looking good, and on to nails. To create the nail extensions, I use some builder nail gel. I roll out tiny bits of gel and cure them onto the hand of the doll. All body modifications are complete, so it's on to painting. After a coat of Mr. Super Clears, I use chalk pastels to start building my color. Slowly building up intensity and shadows 1 layer at a time. Once I was happy with the green portions, I moved on to the pink, building shadows and dimension in the rest of the body like I did in the green sections. Next, I use acrylics to paint the vines a darker green so they stand out from the rest of the body. I also use my watercolor pencils to color and add texture to the thorns. Queen Kitty, of course, had to do a quick worksite inspection to make sure I'm following proper feline petting protocol. Luckily, I passed, and I continue on with painting Fairybay's nails. And darlings, I would have been remiss if I had not given her a healthy dusting of sparkly mica powder. Now, wouldn't I? Now that all the sparkling, painting, and body modifications are complete, I can finally install the wings. I do so by dipping the ends of the wings into some glue and then placing those ends into the holes I drilled earlier. After a quick adjustment of the wings, the body is done and I'm ready to start the outfit. I decided to use the shimmer pink iridescent lament for Miss Divine's dress. I start by building a pair of briefs that will be used as the base to build the rest of the skirt onto. Next, I make a big skirt out of the same material and dip dye it pink. I then pleated it and sewed it to the briefs. Next, using a soft netting material, I repeat the same process of dip dyeing the skirt pink and then gathering it and sewing it on top of the skirt brief combo. For the top half, I heated up some thermoplastic and molded it around the doll, creating a molded brassiere. However, my dog stepped on it and squished it to bits, resulting in me having to make another one. But of course, I forgave him immediately because he is the goodest of boys. How could I stay mad at him? And now that I don't have a squished top, it is time for some paint. I start with a quick primer layer and then I paint to pink with also a pretty iridescent coat on top. Next, I dip dyed a bunch of pieces of that soft netting material pink and green. I then glued them to the top, layering and weaving them as I went so it feels like her dress is almost growing around her. Afterwards, I hand sewed on a cascade of sequin flowers all over her dress, which I believe was the most time-consuming portion of this build. And somehow all of those sequins were not sparkly enough for me, so I added more rhinestones and pearls to the dress. Now that Thornella's gown is sparkly enough, I have one last detail, which is to change out the top's ties. I cut away the old ones and then crochet new ones with some embroidery floss. The last thing to make for this doll is her flower crown. I start with rolling out some polymer clay and weaving a vine base. Once baked, I give it the same paint job that I did on her body vines. But when I went to add her iridescent top coat this time, I almost got slimed. I then add some sequin flowers to the top and finish it off with some rhinestones and pearls. I sewed her crown into place and added some flower details. And now she is ready for her debut. Thank you so much for watching today, darling. I hope you enjoyed today's video, and I'll see you in the next one.